Today on the Tristen Law Show, we're going to go deep into the fifth dimension. We're going to talk to the Manbun Jesus himself, Johnny Radke, and that's today on the Tristen Law Show. Welcome to the Tristen Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. If it is your first time here, new episodes drop Wednesdays, and welcome. I'm your host, Tristen Law, and I'm glad that you're here for episode 28, featuring another personality in and out of the pro wrestling ring, and he is the Manbun Jesus, Johnny Radke. Johnny and I, we're going to talk about how Jesus Camp helped him develop his persona. We talk about a WWE superstar having an in-ring personality close to his. And we also talk about going balls deep into the fifth dimension. No, it's not really what you think. It's really PG. I'd explain it to you now, but it would defeat the purpose of you listening into the whole episode. Before we get into any of that, though, I want to take a second to let you know that Bruno, the Meadowlands Monster, he recently got injured at a pro wrestling show. And if you don't know who he is, he was on episode 12 of this podcast, the Tristen Law Show. If you haven't listened, go ahead and listen after this episode. But there's a GoFundMe set up to help with some of his expenses. They're not asking for a lot of money, but they've already hit the goal. If everyone who listens leave $1 American or the equivalent for your country, it could surely help. Find the link in the description of this episode and at TristenLawShow.com. Up next is the Manbun Jesus himself, Johnny Radke. Don't go anywhere. I am Tristen Law, and this is the Tristen Law Show. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That shirt you're wearing is so not cool. Why don't you head on over to TristenLawShow.com and get yourself a new shirt? Not only will you be cool, but you'll also be supporting the show. What are you waiting for? Go now and get a hat too while you're at it. Thank me later. We're the show at TristenLawShow.com. Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, and I hope that you're having a great time. My next guest is a product of NYWC out there on Long Island. He is the Manbun Jesus, the Gimmick King, and balls deep in the fifth dimension. I'd like to welcome Johnny Radke to the Tristen Law Show. How are you, my friend? Welcome.
What a balls deep introduction you just gave me there. Now, I know we're going to have a one hell of a time because you just put it out there. That what the hell was that? That was awesome. I love it. Hey. I'm ready. You got every single name. You got Manbun Jesus. You got the Gimmick King. You got Johnny Radke. You got all these names. So many names. One guy. Unreal. I'm ready to talk with you, brother.
Hey, what I got to make sure I hit all your monikers so that when people go ahead and they Google you, they know exactly who they're looking for. But Johnny, I see that you're not only a professional wrestler. You're like me as well too. You're also a podcaster. You also host the Squatch and the Bun and Radke Radio. Did I get those right?
Yeah. Oh, those are correct, my friend.
Tell me about that. How did you get into podcasting?
Radke Radio was something that started in WFTU, which is the radio station in Five Towns College in Dix Hills. And that's something we started in 2017, and it was garbage. I'm not going to lie to you. It was garbage when we started. We were recapping wrestling, SmackDown, Raw, the pay-per-views. You know, we're trying to get a following at that point. And then we jumped over to talking about the wrestling we were doing and the stories and the crazy things that we were watching, these people growing up on TV. And now we are having these crazy adventures with them. We're driving in the car with these guys, all this crazy stuff. And our co-host changed at one point from Larry, who I still do Radke Radio with now, and my boy CJ, the psychedelic Sasquatch, where you get the squatch from the Squatch and the Bun. And when coronavirus hit, we had to get out of there, you know. So we had to get the mixer, the microphones, the whole 9 yards. We set the whole thing up, doing it right here. We call it now Fifth Dimension Studios. So we rolling out here. We doing it official, setting it all up.
You see, when I started podcasting, right, Johnny, I did a bunch of other things as well too. I remember my first podcast, it was maybe like 2017 or something like that. And I remember sitting there going, I want to start a podcast. And what do I want to start it with? So I go to my friend Brittany, who does like different marketing stuff like that. And I go, Brittany, I want to start a podcast. She goes, what do you want it to be about, Tristen? I go, everything. And she goes, that's stupid. Because, 1 week you're going to be talking about fish. People that like fish are going to show up. Next week, they still want to hear about fish. But next week, you're talking about tacos. The taco people are not going to want to hear about fish. And the fish people are not going to talk about tacos. Choose one thing. So I said, you know what? I like politics. So I decided I want to make a podcast about politics. And
Hell yeah.
And I was like, you know what? It was cool. I had a really good name. It was called America versus 45. You could look at it from either way. It didn't matter which side you were on. But the issue was I didn't really enjoy what I was talking about. So then I stopped doing that podcast. And then I got into another podcast. Just like you, it was a podcast where we pretty much dissected and discussed the week of pro wrestling. And what we tried to do was definitely make it different. We had different guests comes in, and we were just like you. We were in a studio as well, too, in New Jersey. And a lot of people thought that when they came to do a podcast, they wanted to sit in somebody's basement, but they were in a studio. But then again, COVID, just like it ruined you, it ruined us. And now I sit here and I do the Tristen Law Show where I get to introduce my listeners to the personalities in and out of the ring. And I'm glad that you're here.
What a very similar, unreal story.
So I won't wait, and I'll just ask now. How does someone get balls deep into the fifth dimension?
Oh, my God. Now we say this is a quote that we came out of just the friend group that we were with, all hanging out. Everybody was going to the fifth dimension. We all had different ways of getting there. Not everybody needs to, as you would say, take the same road. Everybody be taking different roads to get to the fifth dimension. You know what I mean? Manbun, Jesus, and the rest of the fifth dimension, the group itself, our third eyes are wide open. And we are the saviors of pro wrestling, you may say. It's a whole psychedelic cult is the whole thing that the fifth dimension is, as we worship the Groovy Grizzly, which is a mascot created by me and the psychedelic Sasquatch many years ago. Now I feel like COVID made everything just fly by. I feel like all the wrestling was just so long ago with people. It's like so long ago.
So how did you become Manbun Jesus? I'll tell you this. By looking at you, and the people that are, my listeners that are listening to this, they can't see you. But ladies and gentlemen, he does have a man bun. But how did you get the Jesus part?
Picking a name, picking a gimmick, I would say, in pro wrestling was the hardest thing. Wrestling was something I wanted to do since I was in elementary school. But I never really thought about what would my character be? What would my name be? What would this be? What would that be? And when I started wrestling, I didn't really have a name. Like they kind of chose one for me, whereas that's where the Johnny Radke part came from. And going on, all these different things. I was currently going to a Jesus camp while I came up with this name. I went to Jesus camp for many, many years. And I was also at that time really getting into like the Grateful Dead and like the psychedelic gimmick, you know what I mean? The whole psychedelic atmosphere, that kind of art and the music and all that stuff, while also really at the time, being into like the whole Jesus thing, listening to these Bible quotes, the campfire songs, all these different things that I was like, this is a character right here. This hippie Jesus guy, this is something. And I just started throwing it out there. Like when I would be training, I was just starting throwing out there little lines and little things, but it hasn't really been until I would say like the last like full year of there being like shows and crowds and stuff. That is really where I just continue. Like every time I went out there, it was just, I'm going to try like stupid shit. Honestly, I'm just going to do like weird guy shit. You know what I mean? And just come out there and be this man bun Jesus.
It's funny, when I first started wrestling as well too, back in 2009 when I had my first show, and I remember going out through the curtain and the promoter goes, "What's your name?" And I was like, "My name is Tristen Law." Man, I was so feeling myself. I was going to spell it TRYSTENLAW. And he goes, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard before." He goes, "Your name is Tristen." And eventually I went out there and I just started becoming Tristen Tristen Law. But you know what? I do have some people that may be listening to this as well, and I am one of those people, and I just need a little bit more clarification. What is a Jesus camp? And somebody that likes Jesus, how would they attend?
Jesus camp is, I was, I was like 14, I think, or like 15. And the church I was going to at the time, they were looking to send somebody to this camp. And I had no clue about it. I never went to sleepaway camp. I never was like away from my house for like more than a night, like without my family, you know what I mean? At this time. So little 15-year-old me was like, all right, I'll go to this Jesus camp. So I get dropped off in the woods with, probably like 200 kids, like around that age, about like 14 to like 20, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? These people are like hugging. These people are just like being so not New York. Because that's where I'm from. I am from the heart of Long Island. I have many nights in this New York City where you find the scum of America. And I was just so taken back. Like all these people were like hugging me and all this crazy shit. And I had a really great time there. Like my first year, like they were singing these campfire songs, and like you really in the middle of the woods, you're laying out under the stars and you're seeing these shooting stars. Always that week for some reason there was a meteor shower every single year that I went there. I went there for like 7 years, and it was a week, it wasn't just that week. You would be part of the community, you know what I mean? They would do different things. They would do outreach projects and stuff. Like I met these people from Jesus camp. I went to Puerto Rico to do a mission work. I went to North Carolina to work there. And I think there was one of Detroit. I went to Detroit with all these people I met from Jesus camp. And, that kind of just, I don't know. It was just it was a gimmick. You know what I mean? Like, just like the whole gimmick that they got going on. I saw that and I was like, this is going right back to it. Like, this is wrestling. Like this, like whole, like, where is this guy? And now I get so tight when I watch the things like the Royal Rumble and I see Seth Rollins come out with Manbun Jesus on his freaking tights now. I was screaming. I was like, holy shit. I can't believe this is going on. You know
what's funny though? So I have a friend who is on a previous episode of this. His name is Darius Carter. I don't know if you know him.
I know DC.
Yep. So Darius Carter, I remember me and Darius, we went to the wrestling school together in Jersey. And I remember when Darius started coming out in the dress pants, and he was like the rich, snobby guy, and he came out with the scarf. Then came out Alberto, then Del Rio, then came out MJF. So that was one of the questions I had to throw at him a couple episodes ago, talking about, how did you feel about it? But how did you feel about Seth Rollins now pretty much taking up a part of your gimmick?
Jesus Christ, man. I feel like sometimes, like if this guy had his own mascot, I'd be like, this guy's watching me on Twitter, for Christ's sake. But the first time I saw it, I was like, fuck, for real? Like this is going to happen to me. I come up with this crazy thing. But then I thought about it, so many people can do the Jesus thing. So many people have done it in all aspects of, entertainment. So many people have done this thing, but no one's, I feel like, really done this. I feel like I'm kind of, I love Charles Manson, and it kind of sounds weird, but I love the gimmick of what he is.
Right.
And that's why kind of what I'm striving to go more towards, this like hippie Charles Manson fucking kind of gimmick who calls himself Jesus. But meanwhile, he is, I don't know. What would you describe him? What is he the savior of? He's a savior of wrestling too, I guess.
True.
But it's just that I would say it's a bit of a different gimmick thing there. I'm not too concerned that he's going to jump over into the fifth dimension anytime soon.
I'll tell you this though. I mean, it is a lot easier for those bigger guys, and I'm not saying that they are, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but it's a lot easier for those guys to take our gimmicks because our gimmick is on a very local scale, but then they take our gimmick, they put it on a national scale. So somebody who doesn't know your gimmick would go, oh,
fake
wow.
Seth Rollins now.
Right. Now you're fake Seth Rollins, but you were here first. But Johnny, let's jump into the Wayback Machine, right? Let's go from the fifth dimension, go back to the first dimension. When did you become a fan of pro wrestling?
Oh my God. The first time I saw wrestling it had to be this. I was pretty young, you know what I mean? My dad had it on the TV, and I saw Randy Orton. He was in the ring with the Undertaker casket, and you had to fake. It was a real Undertaker. I don't know. He burned Undertaker. There was a real Undertaker looking at him. I don't remember much of what it was at the time, but that had to be like 2005. That was the first time I saw it, and I was like, "This is some crazy stuff. Like, I want to be tuned into this." But my mom said that was a little too violent. And the girls, they didn't wear enough clothes for young me to watch the WWE. So a couple of years later is when Mother Dearest started letting me watch the programming. So I got into it when Cena and Edge were having their feud with the, Edge is having sex with Lita in the middle of the ring, all this crazy stuff. Batista is world heavyweight champion on Friday Night SmackDown, feuding with the Undertaker, is when I started watching every week. And I loved that stuff. And now I feel like, I don't know if it's because the times have changed or whatever it is, but I feel like that magic from when I was like watching those guys, like somebody like Umaga, I will freak out for Umaga. I will freak out for Mr. Kennedy because that's what I grew up with. But I feel like that's most wrestling fans, right? You will freak out for who you grew up with. You'll appreciate more.
So, golly, another story like yours that's pretty unique to me. So obviously I'm a lot older than you. Well, not a lot. Let me give myself some credit. I'm just a little bit older than you. And I started watching professional wrestling at like the beginning of the Attitude Era, maybe like 97-ish.
Oh,
right?
You got the good stuff. Right.
Yep,
there.
I was there for ECW, WCW. I was there, all that. I remember when there was so much wrestling on TV, bro. There's nothing, if you didn't have a VCR, you were going to miss it. So there was an episode of Monday Night Raw, and Goldust was having relationship problems with his wife Marlena. So he slaps Marlena, and out of all the times that my mom could walk into the room, she walked into the room at the time when she gets slapped by Goldust. So then my mom goes, "Are you serious? No child of mine, no son of mine will ever hit a woman, so we do not watch wrestling in this house anymore."
We do not watch this shit.
So I remember when my mother's sleeping, or when I think she's sleeping, I would have the TV on really low, and I'd have my ear up to the TV just to listen. And when I hear my mother get up off the bed and I hear the bed creak and the floor creak, I go back in the bed and fake sleep. That's how I would do. That's how I would have to get my fix of wrestling. But
wrestling is the greatest drug that there is ever. You know what I mean?
Bro, I've never done any drugs before. The most I've done is drank black coffee and had a couple beers. So, but I'm telling you, wrestling is so addicting, and those people that don't watch it or understand it, they're missing out. Because let me tell you what makes wrestling special. It takes place. It's not like a TV show. It's not like watching Grey's Anatomy that takes place in a fictional place during a fictional time, either in the past or the future. You're watching this episodic television that's taking place now. So like you usually don't have time for special effects, even though they figure out how to put it in. And I'm hooked to that, where I still just, what? I want to keep up with it. I don't watch Monday Night Raw as much as I should. I watch SmackDown a lot more now. But I watch it, and I'm just like hooked. Even as a wrestler, it took me a long time to embrace that it's okay to be a mark.
I hate when people are out here like, oh, you can't. I remember like when I first started training, and like some of the guys that were there for a while, like one of the newer kids was wearing like some wrestling T-shirt. I forget whose shirt it was, and like they had like a comment to say about it. I think it's like so stupid. Aren't we all like? With the biggest marks are the people that get into it.
Hello.
Like, anyone who signs up is a huge fucking mark.
Hello.
That's really what it is.
Because we got gimmicked. We got worked so much that we decided to go give some carny our money to go ahead and teach us how to go ahead and work people. So who initially got worked? I'm telling you, every single person leading up to the first person who worked everybody else to go learn how to be a wrestler. That's where the work started. But you were talking about your favorites in pro wrestling and stuff like that when you saw Randy Orton. But who were your favorites while you were growing up?
I loved Bad Guy Edge. Bad Guy Edge with Lita walking around. They both had the belts. This is the baddest relationship I've ever seen in my entire life, in my young little life. I am loving it. Like Edge, I've loved him when he retired in, what was it, like 2011, 2012?
Something like that.
I cried my eyes out. I was like, I cannot believe my favorite wrestler of all time right now is someone I loved as the bad guy, and now he's the good guy. I cried my eyes out like a little girl, I swear to God. And I love me some Jeff Hardy too. My favorite Jeff Hardy stuff though was in TNA when he was the Antichrist Jeff Hardy with the purple belt. And a lot of people hate that, but I'm one of those Jeff Hardy weirdos that love that shit.
I was a huge Edge fan, bro. Like I used to back go to MySpace day. My MySpace name was Law, the rated R superstar. I'm such a mark, bro. Hell yeah. I love wrestling. I don't care. So, what was it about those guys that just hooked you so much?
I love that how Edge was such a douchebag. He would just come out with this girl who was just showing her tits, and he was just letting everybody know that at the end of the night, they were all probably just going to go home to their mom's basement, but he was going to go home and he was going to bang this girl, and he was also going to hold up the world title while doing it. And like, how do you not like that guy with the long hair? That's like why Edge was definitely the guy. I've had long hair like majority of my life, and we got the Manbun now.
Right.
He was definitely the guy that I was like fangirling over, you can say, I guess, as a little boy, saying I need to have long hair like the rated R superstar. Unreal.
So for me, I embody in my pro wrestling, persona or what I do in the ring. I embody like Edge, Randy Orton, Triple H. Those are the things that I like to do. I like Triple H because he's slow, methodical. He's a storyteller. I like Edge and Randy Orton because they tell the story with their face. So out of the people that you like, who do you embody within you?
That's a hard question to answer. You know what I mean? I would say when I was putting together, even up until I would say like the first like year or two that I was actually on shows and like doing matches regularly, I did not even know what to put in my moveset. I was like, well, what moves do I do? You know what I mean? So I just I take a little bit of everything. I don't know. It's so hard. This really is a hard one to answer. I love John Cena matches because he is such a gimmick. And I feel like as Manbun Jesus, I don't have to do so much that the other people do. So I love going in there, the setup of getting my ass kicked. I feel like I get my ass kicked very well. I make it look very nice. And when I get to that point that I'm hitting my comeback, I'm hitting that boom, 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 boom. It's pretty much time to, hit some big stuff and go home. We're hitting the 5 moves of doom pretty much. We're screaming our gimmicks, we're screaming our lines to the people. We're hitting our moves and we're going home. So I guess Cena, that's who I would say I would message around.
So you were talking about, being a pro wrestling fan, seeing wrestling with your dad. You saw Randy Orton and Undertaker, doing their thing. So tell me about the first pro wrestling event that you attended live.
Oh my God, here it is. SmackDown ECW. It was the night before Halloween, I believe, at the Nassau Coliseum, 2007, I believe. That's, I would say, around the ballpark. I'm going to try to remember some of what the show started off with. Batista. There was the Undertaker's lights going out. They were out a lot longer than they were on TV. And that's when that's when you see the little things, you know what I mean? Right. You see the little things when you're actually there. I remember Kane's fire going off as a little boy in the nosebleeds. I was like, holy shit, this whole arena just got hot as hell. MVP wrestle, and there was Jamie Noble, Rey Mysterio. I loved Rey Mysterio too as a kid. Rey Mysterio was awesome, and getting to see him live was some crazy shit too. I'm trying to think who else was on there. There was a Monster Mash in the ECW thing. I think John Morrison was ECW champion. CM Punk was on that show. And then you had some fatal 4-way thing with Mark Henry, the Great Khali, Big Daddy V. And there was one more really big one. They did that shit for Halloween, the Monster Mash. And I went with my mom, and my mom will tell you to this day, while watching this go down, she just watched me at the edge of my seat. I didn't cheer. Right. Really, I didn't do anything. It was just, I sat there in awe that I was like seeing this magic in person.
So I'm looking at it now. The Monster Mash Battle Royal took place October 30th, 2007.
2007, yeah. Yep. See, I was right on the money.
Yep, in the Nassau Coliseum in Uniondale, New York. And in that match, it was Mark Henry, Kane, Big Daddy V, and Great Khali. Yeah.
Kane was the other one. I was trying to put it together right there. Big Kane. How could I forget?
Yep. And at that show, the entrance stage was decorated with a Halloween theme for the broadcast. and featured a vignette of Kane to promote the Battle Royal main event. And Nunzio was also dressed as a vampire that episode. Shout out to Lil Guido, Nunzio.
Nunzio was on that show too. That's crazy because I've been in the locker room many times with him, and that's to think that he was on the first wrestling show I ever went to. Is balls deep. You know, it tells you how far this journey has come thus far.
Yeah, you know, Nunzio is one of the people that took me underneath his wing and taught me some stuff. He's a pretty good guy. I don't have one bad thing. I don't think I've ever met a person in the wrestling business that's had something bad to say about Lil Guido, Nunzio, James Maritado. Nobody's had anything bad to say about him. If they say something bad about him, they don't know him. I can tell you that. They probably don't know him. What was the moment that pushed you over the edge to pursue pro wrestling?
We're going back to that night, literally. October 30th, 2007. I come out of the Nassau Coliseum, and I kept it to this day. I don't even know where it is, but on my mother's, what would you call it? The windshield is a flyer for NYWC, this place that you can go and you can train to be a wrestler. And it was one of their shows in this. And many years later, actually not many years later, only 1 year later, in 2008, I went to one NYWC show ever before I signed up there. And I saw some of the guys that ended up, being some of the guys that trained me, like King Mega and Stockade. I saw on that show in 2008. And then fast forward 2016, I graduated high school in 2015. I started off doing college, and I was like, all right, I got a job now. I can pay for this. I saved up my money. So I called them up, rolled up, started training. And within 4 months, they were putting me on shows, which was pretty crazy. I was like, holy shit, they were throwing me to the wolves. But it's been one hell of a journey since. A lot of shit was crammed into the beginning when I started. We had I was there Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday and Tuesday were Tony Nese training, and Thursday was Bull James and Stockade. So we had all these like different heads, you know what I mean? When starting off, like all these guys, the flavors, they say the flavors of ice cream, all these guys are throwing all this like different shit at you, and it stuck. It really did. It like all these different guys, everything they were saying, it stuck, and it was just they were just moving me along. You know what I mean? Usually people they're stuck training like chain wrestling for a while,
right?
But I was learning that shit like this. They were like, okay, let's go to the next thing. Let's go to the next thing. And I was the first person in and the last person out, like the first like year. So they really did push me to the moon. Those guys.
So NYWC did really good soliciting you to go to their school because they had the flyer out in your car, on your mom's car. And where else would you find potential wrestling students other than a pro wrestling show? What made it that you want to go to NYWC? Because I'm sure on Long Island, on Long Island, there's a lot of different places that you can go to learn.
Yeah, I checked it out. The main two that I was, it was either Create a Pro, which was, I think, like an hour or so away from my house, or NYWC, which was by like the school I was going to be going to, like the next year that I was already knowing that I was going to be checking out, and it was like closer. So it was kind of because it was closer between the two, but also because of that, like I swear to God, because of that flyer, like I just felt like, just keeping it all those years and like being like, this is the play. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And then having like, it still being a thing, by that time that it's time for me to do this shit. And I just feel I literally felt like that was the place because of that thing, if I'm weird or not. But I think I was right. You know what I mean? Like, I know the Creative Pro guys, they get a bunch of, opportunities with the guys they're around, and, they're all great guys. So they deserve everything that they're getting. But I feel like in my circle of people at NYWC, I met some of the most awesome friends and travel companions, and have had some of the craziest stories. I've been able to wrestle these guys that I watched on TV. I've been in there with Hornswoggle, Matt Stryker, friggin' Trent Beretta, and God knows who else. I can't even think about them at the moment, but like so many opportunities I got from them. I do feel like that was in my heart, the place for me to go in my journey.
While everyone is working behind me to make the Tristen Law Show better, I wanted to take a quick timeout to ask you to subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars and leave a review. Now, let's get back to the show. So your mom didn't seem like she was a fan of pro wrestling, Johnny. She seemed like she was just along for the ride because you probably nagged her enough. She was going to take you to that SmackDown ECW show on October 30th, 2007. So fast forward to when you went to pro wrestling school. How did your mom feel about you wanting to join wrestling school? Because I tell you this, my mom was actually okay with it because I was paying for it myself. How was your mom?
Well, I would get constant, in high school and in middle school, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? And the answer was always, oh, I want to wrestle for WWE. I want to be a WWE wrestler. And that was always my thing. And she would, put it down every single time. I don't think you're big enough to do that. I don't think you're this, that. Always like a bunch of different excuses. She had like other family members talk to me and all that stuff. But I told her, I said, one day I'm gonna do this shit, and like one day you're gonna fucking sit there in the front row, and you are going to watch me do that shit. And when I signed, she really, she wasn't about it at first, but when I signed up and when I was doing it, she started coming to the shows, you know what I mean? She was, as moms get, she was, oh my God, yeah. Very scared, I'm in there with these guys that are like 300 plus pounds. I'm like 160 pound little fucking me at the time. But, after a while, she really hasn't missed like a single show. She comes to every single one of them. So coming from somebody that was not about it whatsoever to turning around being like, I told her, I said, yeah, you will eat your words. And she ate her words. And she was like, you know what? That's what's up, And I think that's like what a lot of people, when it comes to the, like that whole thing of like wanting to do this since you were so young. I just had recently some kid I went to high school with. He just messaged me. He was like, me, my girlfriend's mom, we all watch your wrestling shit. And like, I can't believe that you always said you wanted to do this. And like, now you're doing it. It's just, if you want to do that shit that bad, you will do it and you will make this shit happen. No matter how many people tell you can't, or you won't, or this and that. If you really want to do it, no bullshit, you make it happen.
You see, my mom, she's the worst person to come for me to bring to a wrestling show, because I normally 99.99% of the times I'm the heel, and she cannot get with the program and understand that she's not supposed to cheer me and she's supposed to boo me. And because of that, I can usually go out there when people are wrestling, when the younger guys are wrestling and they're wrestling their first match. Because for me, like I said in the beginning, I love wrestling. And when I go to a show, I still try to watch as many matches as I can because I still like wrestling, just like the people that paid. And you can always tell whose mom is out there because they're cheering the loudest.
Oh, they'd be screaming. My little sister is the queen, you could say, of when I come out there screaming her head off. You hear her 100% of the time if she's at that show. You know that she's there.
So what was your mindset going into pro wrestling school?
I was terrified, really. I showed up. The first day I showed up, I saw Bull James, who, he was doing stuff with NXT. Just, I would say very... only a few months, I would say, before I signed up, I feel like he was like still there. So I was recently seeing him on the NXT product and these crazy things at like the Barclays Center and all this stuff. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching him and I'm watching Stockade, who I know is the champ. And I've been looking him up and watching, some of the shit that they've been putting on. So I'm like, damn, these guys are fucking huge guys. I'm just this little fucking shit, like this is going to be something else. And I never did anything like that. Like the most I've ever did was like lacrosse when I was like young and shit. Like, so I was not really a sports kid. I never was part of like a real kind of team, kind of getting yelled at kind of shit. So it was this trip, like signing up and doing all this crazy stuff with, just like some of it's very mental, some of the shit, and shot. Very, very mental, I would say. you're getting through the first couple of months.
People that don't wrestle or have never stepped in the ring don't understand how becoming or training to be a professional wrestler is possibly one of the hardest things that, you could do in the entire life. Look, I can't talk about the military because I've never been in it, but, I did go to boot camp for to be a correction officer. And I'll tell you this, like, that wasn't quite as hard as it was to be a pro wrestler. And
oh my God. I remember getting my ass kicked. Like the first, I was only doing it for like, I would say maybe like 2 months at that time. And it was time to like, learn, or maybe it was even shorter than that. It was time to learn how to sell basically. And, we had like 10 guys like around the ring and they just beat the fuck out of me for like 30 minutes. It felt like they beat the shit out of me. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, no, I've been in fights before, but like that has never happened to me in my entire life. I was like, I can't believe that fucking thing. Like that just happened. And it's like, if you want it that bad, like these 10 guys just beat the fuck out of me. You got to get back in there. You know what I mean? Like you got to show up the next day and you got to, now you're taking the bumps. You know what I mean? It's another level of shit when you're doing that thing over and over and over again, when you're learning to do like forearms and shit and you're doing them stiff as fuck and you're you're just smacking people, you're getting hit in the back of the head, all these different, and like when you're doing moves with people for the first time and like they don't really know what they're doing, it's like, well, whoops, like drop you on the back of your dome piece. But you got to come back in like 2 days and do it again.
Yep.
And you got to have the willpower and like the mindset to fight through those, like it's like little injuries, I guess you would say, that are really fucking like nothing, I guess you could say. At this point, I would say it's like, if I broke my nose right now, I'd call it like a little nothing injury. I would put on like a little face mask and you got to go and you got to do the next fucking match.
Exactly. You got to work. You got to do your show.
Yeah, for real. So there's no stopping.
If you could go back and give yourself advice prior to entering pro wrestling school, what would it be?
Oh my God. I don't even know what I would tell this guy. I would tell this kid that you're in for a trip. You are in for one of the craziest adventures. Even though I've only been doing it for about 4 years, I guess, if I'm coming up on 5, one of the craziest adventures. And I would say the heat thing, I would say, don't be afraid of anybody. You know what I mean? Don't be scared of what any of these schmucks have to say, because we're all, at the end of the day, a bunch of people who are putting on spandex and prancing around for the entertainment of others. So I don't know. We're LARPing pretty much. So I would say that these LARPers have massive egos, and you should never let any one of them disrespect you.
I've never thought about that. LARPing,
That's what I would say.
Live action role play, right?
Yeah, yeah, live action role players in spandex prancing around in a little ring.
I can see that. All right, so let's go to your first match. When did you have your first match? Were you ready? When was it, and who was it against?
September something, 2016. So only 4 months after I started training in June. I get the Iggy the month before. I get the little notification that I'm going to be having my first match against Mike Orlando, who just squashed one of the kids I was training with. I was told I was going to go out there. It was going to be the squash, you know what I mean? Same gimmick. And so I was excited, you know what I mean? So I sold a bunch of tickets to that show. I sold almost like 30 tickets.
Right.
I had like 30 people roll up. Mike shows up. I'm ready, but I'm really nervous. I feel like I'm going to go out there and freeze, you know, because this is the first time I'm about to experience this. Like, this is something I've had like dreams about, you know what I mean?
Right.
First time I'm about to experience this moment. And I see Mike and I'm like, oh, what's up, dude? And he was like, all right, man. So he was like, this is your first match? I was like, yeah. He was like, how long you been training? I was like, no, he didn't even ask me that yet. He just said, it's the first match. I was like, yeah. He was like, all right. He goes and he sells merch up until like halfway through. And I'm like, fuck, this guy hasn't talked to me about anything yet. I'm so scared. I'm getting more scared as the time goes on. So he comes over, he sees me, he fucking says like a couple more things. He's like, oh, what do you do? Like, what moves do you do? And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do the super, this is like stupid shit. Right. The super kick, you know, I'll give you like a running elbow in the corner. I'll do a flying knee, and I could do a moonsault. I was like, let me get in the moonsault. He was like, Awesome. So he goes back, he sells merch. Now we're in the second half. He's still selling merch. There is nothing called. I'm like, shit. He comes back right before we go out. He was like, all right. He was like, I'm just going to talk to you while I'm out there and just listen and we're going to do it. And I was like, holy shit, bro. I was like gagging. I was like shaking, gagging. I was like, I can't believe I'm about to go out there for the first time. And this motherfucker is going to call it on the fly with me. I was like, no way. So I go, he's cutting a promo. I interrupt him. I go out there. And like the people already know, like the people who were there for me, they already know I'm going up against this big motherfucker who wears green.
Right.
So they saw him out there and they know. So it was supposed to be Tony Nese's, like he's calling out Tony Nese. And Nese was doing the Cruiserweight Classic at the time. So he wasn't wrestling on the shows, but he would have his match with Orlando later on. But he calls out Nese. Nese's music plays and my weird looking self comes out. Not knowing, like wearing generic tights, you know, the most generic shit. And I come out there and I told him, this is where I had my first name that they told me it sucked. I said, I am Johnny Future and I am going to kick your ass. And I think that was that. When I came back, they told me, they were like, that name sucks. Everything else was awesome. But he had this crazy match with me and it was one of the most crazy experiences ever because it's my first match being out there, seeing the first time seeing this crowd. It's on the fly, and he's just playing with everybody who came to see me, like these people that I sold this tickets to. He had no idea that 30 people that I know from real life are gonna come here and be crazy and like scream and shit. So he's grabbing the microphone, he's cutting promos on them halfway through, and we're doing this shit, and he's calling it to me while I'm in there, super kick, pop, 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 this and that. And I go to the top rope. I do some like Hurricane Rana, and then I do the moonsault. And that was everybody popped. I heard the guys in the back. They had no idea I could even do that shit, and they were screaming. They were like, "Oh my god!" And you know, we do the whole match. Orlando hits his finish. He goes over, throws me out of the ring, yells at the fans, and he gets out of there. And I'm like, "Wow, I can't believe that went crazy good. I can't believe that nothing was called. My first match that went crazy good. And I went to the back and like all my boys, like all the guys I trained with, like the promoter, they were going crazy. They were like, holy shit. They were like, who knew you were about to hit the fucking moonsault, bro? Who even knew you could do that shit? And they were all like going crazy. And I was like, wow. I was like, that was such a special feeling. I think like Mike, and just being out there, that match with Mike Orlando got me hooked. I was like, this is something I can never stop doing this shit, because that feeling out there, that's when you get hooked, and you're like, oh, you fiend for that feeling. Right. You're like, oh. And I've only had that, I would say, like 2 other times since I was doing it, that I had like the people give you the goosebumps. You know what I mean? It's addicting. And when you get that's some crazy shit. So that's he gave it to me my first time being out there, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. And I still to this day, I put him over huge. I say, Mike Orlando he should be signed for how fucking good he carried some person who he didn't even know I was working 4 months. I told him afterwards. Right. I was like, yeah, I'm not even working, just training. I said, yeah, I've been only training since June. He was like, what the fuck? So I'll take that as a compliment, I guess. What the fuck? As been training since June, we killed it.
One of the things that people don't understand is that they go, oh, do you talk about it in the back? I'm like, it honestly depends. If somebody's working somebody that's brand new, I probably would have called everything in the back, especially if I didn't know you. But somebody probably gave him the Iggy that you'd be all right, and he probably went out there and just worked. But
dude, it scared the shit out of me.
I was working for so long as a wrestler, and then I stopped, and then I came back. And one of the things I hated doing was I always hated wrestling the legends, because you couldn't really do much with them. But this one show came along, and the promoter calls me. He goes, hey, Tristen, are you available on this date? I go, yeah. He goes, well, I need somebody to work Sam Houston. Are you okay with that? I go, yeah, bro. I had no fucking clue who Sam Houston was. No clue. So while I'm talking to him on the phone, I Google it. I go, oh, you're talking about Jake the Snakes Roberts, his brother? He goes, yeah. He goes, are you available for the date? I wanted the date. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I'm watching his videos on YouTube, and I'm going, oh, great. It's another guy. No disrespect to any veterans that are listening. No disrespect. But I'm watching this another guy who doesn't want to bump, who's, You know, I'm going to go out there and I'm just, you know, it's not going to be, he's just going to be a shell of himself. So when Sam Houston came walking into the locker room day of show, I'm looking at him like, yo, this looks like the guy from the TV. Just a little bit older. Like, he's not like fat or anything like that. Like, he can.
He's not out of shape or nothing.
No, he's not out of shape. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, great. So I go up to him, I say, hey, how you doing, sir? You know, my name is Tristen. You know, I watch a lot of your videos on YouTube and some of your stuff on the WWE Network. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm looking forward to working with you tonight. You know, I'll come talk to you in a little bit and see what we can do tonight. No problem, kid. I look forward to working with you. I heard good things about you. Great, no problem. So I go up to him a little bit. You know, we were on the first part. We were in the first match after intermission. So I go to him, you know, in the middle of the first part of the show. I go to him. I say, "Hey, sir, any idea what you want to do?" We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. I'll let you know. Okay, cool, no problem. So now I'm looking at the clock and I'm nervous, bro. I've been wrestling for a while, but I've never went out there and worked a match where I called it all on the fly. So like, I'm like, this guy needs to give me something, at least give me a couple spots so I can go out there and I can work. And now it's intermission. Hey, sir, you want to, anything you want to do? You know, let me go out there and sell some gimmicks. You know, when I come back, we'll talk about it. Okay, great. So I'm ready. He comes back to the curtain. He goes, the finish is the DDT. That's all we got. So like, somebody who doesn't understand, in professional wrestling, you need to not only be a good leader, but you also need to be a good follower. In order to be a good follower, you have to be a great listener. And I went out there and I worked that match totally on the fly, knowing that we were working to the DDT. That was the finish. And a lot of people have told me that was one of the greatest matches they've seen me do since I've come back. So shout out to Sam Houston. And I respect you for being able to do that your first time around. Because let me tell you, I was a brand new wrestler at one time, and my head was harder than a motherfucker. So I get it.
It's terrible. Let me tell you, I was like, just what do you call it? I love your story that you just told me, because I was in there with the first. So Bull James, I was like one of his kids. You know what I mean? When he started training, I was like one of the ones that started, and he like scooped me underneath his wing. Like I was a Bull James kid, really. Even though we have Tony Nese and Stockade there, I was a Bull kid. And when I had my first match with him, it was champion versus champion over at NYWC. He was the heavyweight champion. I was the fusion champion. And I was like, all right, like I'm excited and I'm nervous because like I'm working the guy who, you know, my mentor really at this point. And we have this, like he's booked in like Philadelphia or some shit. So he's coming over to Deer Park on Long Island. And they are hitting traffic and all the whole 9 yards. So he gets there, and what did he say? What the fuck was the finish? Something was the finish, like Vader bomb or some shit, something like that. And I go out there, and we're wrestling around. You know, we're wrestling around for like 8-10 minutes, and he hits me with the seated senton,
right?
And at the time, that's his finish. You know what I mean? Nobody's kicked out of that shit. So he hits me with it. And I was like, kick out. And he fucking didn't hear me. Didn't say anything. So I was like, oh, fuck. Am I going to fucking kick out of his finish right now? So I didn't. I laid there for 1, 2, 3. And he fucking gets up and he starts yelling at me. He was like, what's wrong with you? Why did you not kick out? And I was like, it was your finish. He was like, yeah, and you were supposed to be the first person that kicked out of it, dummy.
Oh, damn.
So, you know, sometimes you get screwed out there when you're working on the fly, but you know, it happens. You have moments either way. You're getting a fucking moment out of it. And who knows? You know, the people don't know. They don't know what it is until they listen to something like this. And you're like, oh, let me go back and look.
And that's the best part. So, Johnny, if it wasn't you, I know you said you always wanted to be a pro wrestler. When people would ask you, what did you want to do? You always said pro wrestling. So if it isn't pro wrestling, if it wasn't pro wrestling, what else would it be?
See, now, when I first started going to college, I was like, even throughout high school, I was like, what the fuck am I going to do now? You know, I started going to Suffolk Community, just a regular community college. And then I was like, all right, well, what are we going to do next? Because I finished up there fairly quickly because I had a bunch of courses from high school and shit, like college courses. So I was only there for like a semester or two because I did a bunch of other stuff beforehand. So then I was like, all right, and now what am I going to do? And I decided to get into like the radio and the news and all that stuff. And I hate the news. I hate the media. And I think it's all a bunch of crazy shit. I just don't. And like the thing is funny that I have a bachelor's degree now in something that I don't even want to be a part of. But I love something like podcasting and like the radio and this and that. So if it's not wrestling, you know, I want it to be something that I'm talking, something that I'm entertaining in some kind of way. Maybe a fucking Ryan Seacrest or some shit. No, I'm playing. But I would like to do the like a radio DJ kind of thing, you know, keep the podcasting going and, you know, keep making memories and keep getting stories to tell just to entertain.
I feel like you're like a splitting image of everything that I want to do. I didn't get to go to school for broadcasting because, you know, that's not how life went for me. I remember living in the Bronx as a teenager. They took us to Hofstra. And I remember on Long Island, and Hofstra has a radio studio. And, bro, I was hooked. I was like, I want to work in radio. And for me, it never got to work out like that. But going to where I recorded the previous podcast that I used to do, it was in a radio studio. And it was in a school that they taught broadcasting. So let me tell you, I'm not an idiot. If you give me an opportunity to ask you a couple questions, I'm going to ask you some questions. And when I walk away, I'm going to take notes. I'm going to go home and practice these things. So for me, I'm pretty much self-taught, but I'm actually getting ready to go to a trade school to take up some more broadcasting.
That's what I'm talking about, brother.
Because for me, if it's not I am okay not being a world-renowned pro wrestler, but I'm okay if I'm a podcaster or a broadcaster. But I'm okay not being a broadcaster if I'm a world-renowned podcaster.
See, that's the thing right now. Like, you got to crush it with both. You got to grind with both, but fucking one of them's going to happen. That's the way I look at it. If I keep doing them, I keep putting my all into both these things, you know, one of them's ought to break through one of these times. Right. Someone's going to come calling.
I 100% agree, because you know what? They might look at me and be like, well, you know what? You're probably not what we're looking for, but we heard you do this podcast.
We heard your voice, and your voice is really nice. So.
Right. You know, like again, I am 100% okay being a wrestler who does a podcast, but I'm also 100% okay being a podcaster who does wrestling.
Damn, that's what I'm talking about, straight up. I don't care which one you identify me as, but at least if I'm doing both and I'm having a good time, that's what I'm talking about.
If I can't do Top 40, or if I can't do Drive Time Radio, or if I can't do, you know, a podcast, I would love to work for WWE or Ring of somebody talking about wrestling. I would love to do this. I think a show like this fits AEW, because I don't want to talk to the guys, the big name guys. All I want to do is talk to the younger guys that are on Dark. That's all I want to talk to. I'm going to talk to those guys. I want to get those guys over. I want the world to hear those guys' voice. The guy,
who's talking to him?
Nobody's talking to him.
Someone needs to talk to him.
I've got one of them on my show before. I had Ryan Rembrandt on the show. Remarkable Ryan Rembrandt, great guy. So, you know, hopefully, you know, shout out to him and shout out to you. But what are your goals for pro wrestling, Johnny?
I definitely want to make it somewhere. You know, it was always, like you said before, you know, I've come to the point where I'm okay if it's not world renowned, but I know it, like, in the back of my head, that's not enough. Like, I need to make it somewhere, and I need to make it big. And in my heart, in my mind, and everything that I'm determined in, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care if it takes 30 years. I don't care if it takes 40 years. I don't care if I'm doing this shit in a wheelchair. Somehow, some way, I'm going to make it somewhere fucking big. And that's my main goal, is somewhere. You know what I mean?
Right.
I want the people to know. I want the people to know my story. I want the people to know the whole, from beginning to the end. I want these people to be watching, and I want these people to be entertained.
If WWE, AEW, or some other high-profile professional wrestling company is listening right now, why are you the best person to be given a contract?
Unreal. I might look like Seth Rollins with red hair. I may be the psychedelic Rollins, bro. But in the end, I think that some of the promos, some of the creations, some of the balls deep characters, all this shit. Like, I got the Groovy Grizzly, bro. I have the psychedelic mascot. The mascots have been done before, but I feel like nobody does it like the Groovy Grizzly. Nobody shakes their rear end like the Groovy Grizzly does. And Manbun Jesus is one balls deep character. And I want them to know that I am a balls deep character. I may be a pro wrestler, but in a world of pro wrestlers, we need more characters. So that's what I want them to know. We need characters, basically. And your boy is one of them.
I can feel that. I feel that. Outside of pro wrestling, what is important to Johnny Radke?
I love the Grateful Dead. Do you know anything about the Grateful Dead?
I knew that they were at Woodstock, and I only live about 35 minutes from where Woodstock was. I can tell you that.
Now, the Grateful Dead is music that is, they have their songs, and their songs are not, commercial. They're not like 2-minute, 3-minute songs. They play these songs for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And every time they play the song, it's different. And they'll play it for 5 minutes. They'll play it for 10 minutes. And then the next night they'll play it for, they'll play that shit for 25 minutes. They don't give a shit. And that's what I love about them. And even now they have I guess you can call it the cover band, Dead and Company, which is a couple of the original Grateful Dead members, as well as John Mayer. And I think they got like one new guy, this guy, Otel. And they sing the same songs, the same songs that Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, Bob Weir, all of them sang, and they sing the same thing, and they do the same thing every night. And it is like a whole culture. These people will get on the bus and follow this band around the entire country. They will not, that's what their life is about. They'll be selling merch in the parking lot to pay for their way in, and like to pay for their life on the road, basically. And I think that's some crazy, that's like some pro wrestler stuff. And that's why I love the Grateful Dead. But like the fact that this community is still kicking like since like the 60s, and like they're still going now, I love that shit. And the music is awesome. And it's just always different. Every time you hear the same song on a different night is a different song. And that's what I love about it. It's like its own gimmick.
I like that. So
that's my main thing, I would say, outside of wrestling.
It's inevitable. We all got to check out of life, but things like this and YouTube will keep us alive forever. So what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, my legacy. I just want to, growing up watching wrestling, life is not always the easiest. There's many, many side roads throughout life. And I feel like one of the constants has always been pro wrestling. You know what I mean? Just coming back to these stories and keeping me distracted from the real life bullshit that we all deal with. And that's what I really want to do for other people. You know what I mean? I want to be a distraction for other people dealing with the bullshit of life, that when they turn on the TV, maybe one day, or when they go on YouTube, when they go on, what do you call it? Apple Podcasts, whatever, SoundCloud, that they turn this thing on and that they forget about all the little things that piss us off in life and they have a shitty day. You know what I mean? I just want them to be distracted. I want to make them laugh, get their minds off all the BS, because we're stuck in a bunch of BS COVID style. You know what I mean?
What is next for Johnny Radke?
What is next? Right now, we are currently working on some things over at the NYWC for, a little no fans things over on their YouTube channel, NYWC TV. You can check that out. And we're still doing some things there, training. I've been in talks with a couple of places down in Florida that I want to try to get down to and entertain those people until the fans come back here in New York, because I miss them so much. But we'll see how much longer that's going to take until we get New York shows back. Governor Cuomo, please, if you're listening, Cuomo, give us the shows.
Well, Johnny, it was a pleasure to have you on here today. I really feel your vibe. I appreciate everything that you've done. Shout out to NYWC, New York Wrestling Connection. But tell everybody how they can find you outside of the Tristen Law Show.
Unreal. You can follow me at Manbun Jesus on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Manbun Jesus 420 on TikTok, Johnny Radke TV, Manbun Jesus TV on YouTube, as well as the Radke Radio Productions YouTube channel.
Well, I know I'm going to go ahead and give all of those a follow. So Johnny, I thank you very much. I appreciate you. Tell everybody at NYWC I said hello. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere, because when I get back, I will give you my thoughts on the Manbun Jesus, the gimmick king, who was balls deep in the fifth dimension, Johnny Radke, and I will tell you also what's happening next week on the Tristen Law Show.
Hello to all of you Tristen Law Show podcast listeners. This is Frank Mandolini. You may not recognize this voice. I am the Italian podcaster who talks about the business side of wrestling. Yeah, I know, it's quite niche. But if you look for Last Minute Wrestling Podcast on all of your social media and wherever you get your podcast, you've been amazed to find interviews with people such as Rob Van Dam or Matthew Gregg from Botchamania and many others, so you get to know many aspects of the wrestling business that normally you don't hear in wrestling podcasts. Because let's face it, who wants to hear another guy talk about Monday Night Raw? Yeah, me neither. So guys, go to lmwpodcast.com or search for LMW Podcast everywhere in the interweb. And remember guys, this is Frank Mandolini from the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, and you stay safe.
Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, and I hope that you're having a great time. We're looking to promote your band or brand here on the Tristen Law Show. Contact the show at tristenlawshow.com or tristenlawshow@gmail.com for more info. What did you think of Johnny Radke? I'll tell you this. I appreciate his audio setup. His audio sounded great. And those guys at NYWC in Deer Park, New York, they're putting out great wrestlers. And if you're a personality in and out of the pro wrestling ring, I want to hear from you. Reach out to the Tristen Law Show at tristenlawshow@gmail.com or find the show on social media. All the links are at tristenlawshow.com. Johnny, my brother, thank you very much for the time. Next time on the Tristen Law Show, you're going to meet Steve Off. He's not only a pro wrestler, but he's one of the big wigs over there at Pro Wrestling Magic. I've known him for quite some time, and you're going to hear us get in depth with his stint on WWE and much more. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you subscribe so that you can be here next week. If you like this episode, I need a favor from you. Yes, I am talking to you. Share this episode on your favorite social media platform, and don't forget to tag myself in the show. Don't make this be the thing that you do. Let's make this thing that we do. You can also walk up to a random stranger, tell them to listen to the Tristen Law Show. Yeah, they may think you're crazy, but who cares what other people think, right? Fine. If you're worried about being judged, go on over to tristenlawshow.com and at least buy a shirt or maybe a hoodie or a hat. People think that you're really cool. Rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars on Apple Podcast and leave a review, please. Reviews mean a lot. Whichever podcast platform you're using to listen, please subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. And the best part is that it's free. Learn about myself and the Tristen Law Show by typing tristenlawshow.com in your internet-enabled device for more info. I'll be waiting for you next week. I am Tristen Law, and you've been listening to the Tristen Law Show. And until next time, adios.